My name's Mateus, and I've been a plumber for about 10 years now. It's not glamorous work, but it pays the bills, especially the night jobs. See, people panic when their pipes burst at 2 a.m., and they'll pay double for someone to show up fast. That's why, when my phone rang around 11 p.m. on a Friday, I didn't think twice. The rain was coming down hard, drumming against my truck windows like it was trying to get in. The woman on the line sounded ancient, her voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. She said there were noises in her pipes, not the usual clanks, but whispers, like someone was trapped inside them. I figured it was just old house creaks, but the fear in her voice got to me. She gave me an address way out in the sticks, past the last streetlight in town. When I pulled up, the place looked off. Not abandoned, but too still, like a held breath. The porch light flickered, casting long shadows over the overgrown hedges. The front door was cracked open, which was weird. Who leaves their door unlatched in the middle of nowhere? Taped to it was a note in shaky cursive. I'm in the bedroom. You can start in the basement. I called out a hello, but no answer. Fine. Basement it was. The stairs groaned under my boots, and the air smelled like damp earth and something sour, like rotten flowers. I was elbow deep in the pipes when I heard it. 3 slow knocks, the kind that vibrate in your bones. I froze. The house had been dead silent a second ago. I climbed back up, my flashlight cutting through the dark like a knife. Peered out the grimy basement window. Nothing but rain and swaying trees. Probably the wind, right? But then it came again. Boom, boom, boom. Louder this time, like fists slamming wood. My skin prickled. Hello, I shouted, my voice bouncing off the walls. Silence. That's when I noticed the hallway was colder, the kind of cold that seeps into your joints. I crept toward the front door, half expecting some drunk kid playing pranks. But the note was gone. Not fallen, not crumpled, gone. The tape was still there, sticky and fresh. My throat went dry as I called out for the old lady, my words echoing down the hallway. The bedroom door at the end was slightly ajar, shadows pooling inside. My flashlight shook as I pushed it open. The room was empty. No furniture, no old woman. Just a single teacup on the floor, still steaming. The air smelled like lavender and something metallic. That's when the knocking started inside the walls, fast and frantic, like something was trying to claw its way out. I bolted, didn't even grab my tools. The front door slammed shut behind me as I sprinted to my truck, the knocks now coming from underneath the hood. I didn't look back. The drive back to town felt like it took hours. My hands were glued to the steering wheel, knuckles white, and every bump in the road made me flinch. I kept checking the rearview mirror, half expecting to see that old woman's face staring back at me from the back seat. But there was only darkness. When I finally got home, I downed 2 shots of whiskey just to stop my hands from shaking. I told myself it was just some weird coincidence. Maybe the house had squatters, or the lady had wandered off. But deep down I knew that house wasn't right. For days, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every pipe groan in my own apartment made my heart race. I needed answers, so I went back to that rural area during daylight, this time stopping at a gas station where a few locals were hanging around. I casually mentioned the house, describing the old woman's call. The moment I did, the chatter died. An older guy with a scar over his eyebrow exhaled sharply and said, "You're lucky you got out." Then he dropped the bomb. The woman who lived there, a widow named Dona Alzira, had died 3 weeks before. The house had been empty ever since. The gas station guy, whose name turned out to be Joao, leaned in closer like he was sharing a secret the whole town knew but didn't talk about. "Nobody goes near that house anymore," he muttered, wiping his hands on his grease-stained shirt. "Not since the knocks started." My stomach twisted. He explained that after Dona Alzira died, neighbors would hear 3 slow knocks at her door, always at night, always when the rain was heavy. A few brave souls went to check over the years, but they all came back pale and silent, refusing to say what they saw. "Some say it's her, still waiting for someone to fix those pipes," Joao added with a humorless laugh that I drove past the house again on my way out, daylight doing nothing to soften its eerie presence. The door was shut tight now, no note, no flickering porch light, just a hollow shell. Then, as I slowed down, I saw it, a face in the upstairs window. Pale, blurred, but unmistakably there. Our eyes met for a split second before it vanished. I floored the gas pedal, my heart hammering. That night, I dreamt of pipes bursting open, of whispers swirling in the water, of 3 knocks that grew louder until I woke up screaming that I tried to forget it. Threw myself into work, avoided night jobs, even changed my route so I wouldn't pass that stretch of road. But some things stick to you like tar. A week later, I was under a sink at a client's house when the pipes let out a hollow, 3-note clang. My whole body locked up. The client frowned and said, "Weird, they've never done that before." I finished the job in record time, hands trembling so badly I nearly dropped my wrench. That night, I left every light in my apartment on. Sleep didn't come. Instead, I stared at the ceiling, listening to the rain tap against the window like bony fingers. Then, at 3 a.m., my phone rang. The screen flashed unknown number. I knew, but I answered anyway. Static hissed, then a whisper. "You didn't finish the job." The voice was watery, distant, like it was coming through a submerged tunnel. I threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall and died mid-ring. The next morning, I drove straight to the church in the next town over. The priest took one look at my face and sighed, like he'd been expecting me. "You went to the widow's house," he said, not a question. I didn't ask how he knew. The priest handed me a small vial of holy water and a rusted key. "She's not evil, just stuck," he said, like that made it better. "Go back. Finish what you started." I wanted to refuse, but the way he gripped my arm told me this wasn't optional. That evening, I stood in front of the house again, the key burning a hole in my pocket. The door swung open before I could knock. Just a crack, enough to let out a smell of damp linen and old tea. The basement stairs creaked under me, louder than last time, almost deliberate. And there, in the dim glow of my flashlight, were my abandoned tools, laid out neatly in a row, as if waiting that I worked faster than I ever had, tightening joints, sealing leaks, my breath coming in ragged bursts. The whole time, the air hummed like a held note. When the last pipe was fixed, the house let out a sigh. The knocking stopped. Upstairs, a teacup clinked against a saucer, and a whisper curled through the dust. "Obrigada." I ran and didn't stop until I hit the city limits. The calls never came again, but sometimes, when the rain's just right, I'll hear 3 faint taps in the walls. Not angry, not hungry, just a reminder. And I whisper back, "My brother Lucas and I needed a break from the noise of the city, so we rented this secluded cabin in the mountains, wooden, rustic, the kind of place you see in hiking brochures. It was supposed to be peaceful. No Wi-Fi, no neighbors, just fresh air and quiet. The first night, we cracked open some beers, played cards, and laughed about how weird it was to hear actual silence for once. But then 3 a.m. hit. That's when the knocking started. 3 slow, heavy raps on the front door, like someone was testing if we'd answer. Lucas bolted upright, and I remember the way his face looked in the dim lantern light. Not scared yet, just confused. We called out, thinking maybe a lost hiker was out there. But when I swung the door open, there was nothing. Just fog so thick it looked like smoke, swallowing the trees whole. No footprints, no sound, just waiting. The next night, it happened again. Same time, same knock. But this time, we heard it, the creak of floorboards inside the cabin, like something was pacing near the door. Lucas grabbed his hunting knife, and I'll never forget how his hands shook. We checked every corner, under the beds, even the damn fireplace. Nothing. The door was still locked, deadbolt engaged. That's when I set up my GoPro with night vision, pointing straight at the entrance. I told myself it was probably an animal. But deep down, I knew. Animals don't knock. The footage the next morning proved it. The knocking started with no one there, but then the door moved. Not from the wind, from the inside. Like something was leaning into it, testing the wood. That's when we ran. We didn't even fold our clothes. Just threw everything into bags, the zippers screeching like alarms in the dead quiet of the cabin. Lucas kept glancing at the door, his voice a tight whisper. "It's daytime. It can't. It wouldn't follow us now, right?" I didn't answer. My skin was crawling, like the walls were breathing behind us. The GoPro footage played on loop in my head, that unnatural shift of the door, the way it bowed inward for just a frame, as if something had pressed against it with weight but no shape. The tires of our truck spat gravel as we peeled onto the mountain road, and for the first time, I noticed how the cabin's windows looked like blacked-out eyes. Watching us leave, the gas station at the base of the mountain was a relic, flickering neon sign, a rusted bell on the door. The clerk, an old guy with a beard like frayed rope, barely looked up as we bought energy drinks and jerky. Lucas, always the talker, cracked a joke about cabin fever, but his laugh sounded like a dry twig snapping. Then the clerk froze. "You boys stand up at Pine Ridge?" I nodded, and he leaned in, smelling like stale coffee and motor oil. "Which cabin?" When I said number 6, his knuckles went white on the counter. "Hell, you heard the knocks, didn't you?" Lucas and I exchanged glances. That's when he said it, the words that turned my stomach to ice. "Last guy who rented that place?" They found his stuff, but not him. Just scratches on the door. Inside, the clerk's words hung in the air like a bad smell. Lucas, usually the skeptic, gripped my arm so hard it hurt. "Scratches? What the hell does that mean?" The old man wiped the counter with a rag, avoiding our eyes. "Means he didn't leave. Not willingly." He pointed to a yellowed newspaper clipping taped near the cash register, a grainy photo of cabin 6, its door splintered like something had tried to claw through. The headline read, "Hiker vanishes in Pine Ridge, no leads." My throat went dry. That cabin had felt wrong from the first night, but now it made sense. The knocking wasn't someone trying to get in. It was something inside pretending to be outside. And we'd slept there for 2 nights, listening to it learn how to sound human. The clerk slid us 2 stale coffees, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You boys hear anything else?" Voices? Whispers. Lucas shook his head, but I remembered the second night, just before dawn, a sound like paper tearing. I chalked it up to the wind. Now, I wasn't sure. "That's his trick," the clerk said. "Gets you to open the door. Lets him out." The coffee tasted like acid. "Who's him?" Lucas demanded. The old man just tapped the newspaper photo where the shadows under cabin SIX's porch looked too thick, too deliberate. Ain't my story to tell. But folks around here know. You don't answer the door after dark. And you never let it know you're alone. Outside, the wind kicked up, howling like it was laughing at us. The drive back to the city should have felt like safety, but every shadow between the trees made my hands tighten on the wheel. Lucas kept replaying the GoPro footage on his phone, zooming in on that single frame where the door bulged inward. "Look at the grain of the wood," he muttered. "It's not just pressure, it's fingers." I didn't want to see it again, but there they were, for faint ridges in the wood, spaced like human fingers, but too long, too thin. The timestamp glowed 3:03 a.m., same time as the knocking. That's when I realized we'd been hearing it practice. Night 1, it knocked clumsily. Night 2, it added footsteps. By night 3, it had almost figured out how to turn the knob. If we'd stayed one more night, would it have learned to speak? At a red light, Lucas Googled Cabin 6 disappearances. His screen flooded with forum posts and a sheriff's report from 1992. A hiker named Eli McCullough had rented the cabin for a week. On day 5, neighbors reported knocking sounds like a man begging to be let out. When deputies arrived, they found Eli's backpack, his camera, with 37 photos of the door, and a journal entry. It mimics. "It wants me to open the door so it can wear my skin." The last photo showed the door slightly ajar from the inside. No body was ever found. Lucas turned to me, pale. That clerk wasn't warning us about the cabin. He was warning us about whatever's trapped inside it. The light turned green. Neither of us mentioned that we'd left the cabin door unlocked when we fled. Back in my apartment, we drank whiskey straight from the bottle, jumping at every creak. Lucas kept checking the peephole. What if it followed us? I laughed, a shaky, unnatural sound, but then I remembered. We'd packed in a hurry. Had we taken everything? My phone buzzed. A notification from my cloud storage. New video detected from GoPro. Impossible. The camera was still in the cabin. Lucas grabbed my wrist as I tapped it. The footage was dark, but the timestamp read tonight's date, 2:59 a.m. 4 minutes from now. The camera angled at my apartment door. As we watched, frozen, 3 slow knocks echoed through the apartment from the hallway. The video's door handle began to turn. Lucas screamed. The screen glitched. When it cleared, the door was open just enough to show a single eye pressed to the crack. It wasn't human. We barricaded the door with my dresser, calling 911. The operator said officers would come, but her voice sounded far away, like she was underwater. Lucas whispered, "It's learning fast." Because now it wasn't just knocking, it had our voices. From the hallway, my own voice sobbed, "Let me in." It's got Lucas. While Lucas's voice giggled, "Kaio, open the door. I'm scared." The knob rattled. The wood groaned. We backed toward the fire escape as the dresser slid an inch. That's when the power went out. In the blackness, the knocking became pounding, then splintering. Something whispered, "You left the cabin door open." Now I'll never leave. The last thing I saw before we jumped out the window was the dresser toppling. The door swung wide. Nothing was there. But the knocking started again, this time on the fire escape below us. We lived. Barely. Lucas broke his ankle from the fall. Cops found no signs of breaking and entering, just our wrecked furniture and one detail that made my blood freeze. Fingerprints on the inside of my apartment door. Old ones, they said. Matched a missing persons case from 1992. Eli McCullis. Now, a year later, I still wake at 3:03 a.m. Sometimes, my phone buzzes with a notification. I never opened those videos. Lucas moved to another country, changed his number. But last week, my new roommate asked why I keep a GoPro pointed at our door. I didn't answer. He wouldn't believe me anyway. Not until he hears it for himself. That first, hesitant knock. The one that sounds almost human. So here's my warning. If you rent Cabin 6 in Pine Ridge, ignore the knocking. No matter how human it sounds. No matter if it cries your name. Especially then. Because it's not trying to get in. It's reminding you that it's already inside. And it's learning. The clerk was right about one thing. You're never alone in that place. But he was wrong about the door. The real danger isn't letting it out. It's realizing too late that you brought it home with you. I'll never forget the mix of pride and relief I felt when I finally moved into my own place. After years of dealing with messy roommates and cramped apartments, I'd saved enough to rent a brand new condo. Modern, secure, and most importantly, quiet. The building had keycard access, security cameras, and neighbors who mostly kept to themselves. The first night, I slept like a rock, savoring the silence. But on the second night, at exactly 3:07 a.m., I jolted awake to 3 slow, heavy knocks on my front door. Boom, boom, boom. The sound was too deliberate to be accidental, but I figured some drunk neighbor had the wrong unit. I waited, heart pounding, but no one called out or knocked again. After 10 minutes of silence, I forced myself back to sleep, brushing it off as city living. The next night, it happened again. Same time, same 3 knocks. This time, I shot out of bed, my pulse roaring in my ears. I crept to the door and pressed my eye against the peephole, expecting to see someone. Maybe a prankster, a lost delivery guy, anything. But the hallway was empty. Not a flicker of movement, not a shadow, just the sterile glow of the overhead lights. I unlocked the door, stupid, I know, and stepped out, but the air was dead silent. No footsteps retreating, no elevator ding. Nothing. I even checked the security camera feed on my phone. No one had passed my door all night. That's when the first real thread of fear curled in my stomach. This wasn't a mistake. It was for me to be why the third night, I was too wired to sleep. I sat in bed, staring at my phone until the screen burned my eyes, jumping at every creak of the building. Then, right on schedule, boom, boom, boom. My whole body locked up. But this time, something new slithered under the door, a whisper. Not a hiss, not the wind. A voice, low and rasping, like someone had scraped their throat raw. It said my name, Renah, just once, but so close it could have been standing right behind me. I didn't breathe, didn't blink. The voice didn't come again, but the knocks did. 3 more times, slower, like whatever was out there was getting impatient. That's when I grabbed my laptop and ordered a motion-activated camera. I wasn't waiting for the building's security to care. The camera arrived the next day. I mounted it outside my door, angled to catch the whole hallway, and set my phone to record audio inside my apartment, just in case. That night, I barricaded myself in my room with a kitchen knife on the nightstand. Pathetic, I know, but it was all I had. I didn't sleep. I watched the clock tick toward 3 a.m., my stomach knotting tighter with every minute. Then, silence. No knocks. No whispers. Just the hum of the fridge. Relief flooded me. Maybe it was over. But when I checked the camera footage at dawn, my blood turned to ice. The hallway was empty all night. Not a single shadow. No one even walked past. But the audio recording, that's where the real horror was. The audio recording was worse than I could have imagined. At exactly 3:07 a.m., 3 knocks echoed through my apartment, but they weren't coming from the door. The sound was muffled, like something knocking from inside the walls. Then came the whispers, that same shredded voice, but now it wasn't just saying my name. It was pleading, Renah, let me out. Over and over, each time more desperate, like it was moving around my apartment. My skin crawled. I played it 5 times, convinced I was hallucinating, but the voice was undeniably there. And the worst part? On the recording, you could hear me, the rustle of my sheets, my shaky breathing, but nothing had woken me up. Whatever was in here with me, it didn't want me awake. It wanted me asleep. I tore my apartment apart that morning. Checked every vent, every cabinet, even behind the fridge. Nothing. Then, as I passed my bedroom closet, I froze. The door was slightly ajar. I never left it open. I'd had a fear of closets since I was a kid. My hands shook as I reached for the handle. The hinges squeaked as I swung it wide, revealing my hanging clothes, a shoebox, and nothing else. I exhaled, but as I turned to leave, a glint caught my eye. The back wall of the closet wasn't smooth. Deep, jagged scratches ran down the wood, like something with claws had been trapped inside. Fresh sawdust sprinkled the floor. My stomach dropped. Those scratches hadn't been there yesterday. I ran my fingers over the claw marks, the wood splintering under my touch. They were too precise to be random. 3 parallel grooves, repeating in waves, like something had methodically tried to tunnel through. My mind raced. Rats? A break-in? But rats don't whisper names, and burglars don't scratch from inside closets. I grabbed my phone to call the super, then stopped. What would I even say? Hey, my closet's haunted. Instead, I did something stupid. I pressed my ear against the back panel. For a second, there was only silence. Then, a faint, wet click, like a tongue peeling off the roof of a mouth. I recoiled so fast I knocked over a lamp. That's when I noticed the smell, copper and rot, seeping through the cracks. That I slept at a motel that night, but the knocking followed me. Not at 3 a.m. This time, it started at midnight. Boom, 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 right on the bathroom door. The voice wasn't whispering anymore. It was screaming, guttural and raw, like it had been waiting for me to leave the apartment to get louder. I threw on the lights, nothing. But the mirror was fogged up, though I hadn't showered. Dragging my sleeve across the glass, I saw 2 words scrawled in the condensation. Come home. My legs gave out. I knew then it wasn't about the apartment. It was about me. Whatever was in that closet had been invited somehow. Maybe it had always been there, waiting for me to be alone, waiting to be fed. The next morning, I stood outside my apartment door for a full 10 minutes, keycard trembling in my hand. Every instinct screamed to run, but the motel had proved nowhere was safe. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. The air was thick, like the walls had been breathing in my absence. The closet door stood wide open, though I'd swear I'd shut it. My clothes were strewn across the floor, not torn but carefully arranged in a spiral pattern leading to the back panel. The scratches were deeper now, forming symbols I didn't recognize, crude circles with jagged lines cutting through. My phone buzzed suddenly, making me jump. A notification from my cloud storage. Asterisk, 1 new voice memo received. 3:07 a.m. Asterisk, I hadn't recorded anything. When I played it, my own voice echoed back. You shouldn't have looked. I grabbed a crowbar from the maintenance closet downstairs, my hands slick with sweat. If something was in those walls, I'd tear them open myself. The first swing at the closet's back panel sent a shock up my arms. The wood gave way too easily, like it had been hollowed out. Behind it wasn't insulation or brick, but a tunnel, not man-made. The edges were ragged, clawed out in frantic swipes. A warm, meaty stench rolled out, making me gag. Then I heard it, a wet, rhythmic sound from deep in the darkness. Slap, 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 like bare feet on wet concrete. I stumbled back as the whispering started again, but now it came from all directions, even inside my own head. You're home now, it sighed, almost relieved. The crowbar clattered to the floor. The darkness in the tunnel pulsed, like it was alive. I grabbed my phone's flashlight, but the beam died after 3 feet, swallowed by something thicker than shadows. The slapping footsteps grew louder, closer, until I saw movement at the edge of the light. A hand, pale and too long, fingers twitching like spiders learning to walk. Then another. They gripped the edges of the tunnel, and the thing pulled itself forward. No face, just a smooth stretch of skin where features should have been, split by a vertical mouth dripping black saliva. It tilted its head, and when it spoke, it used my mother's voice. You left the door open. I realized then what the symbols in the closet meant. They weren't warnings. They were an invitation. And I'd accepted it the moment I'd listened to the whispers that I slammed the crowbar through the thing's hands. hearing bones crunch like dry twigs. It shrieked, a sound that shattered every light bulb in the apartment. But I didn't stop. I nailed the closet shut with every screw I could find, then poured a line of salt across the threshold, my grandma's old superstition. The banging started immediately, furious now, the whole closet shaking. But the door held. I moved out that same day, leaving everything behind. Sometimes, though, when I'm half asleep in my new place, I'll hear 3 faint knocks, and I've learned not to answer. The super later told me the condo's previous tenant vanished without a trace. The weirdest part? He shared my name. Now I keep all my closets locked, just in case.